Hi guys, I'm just about finished with my series on turning this Tuff shed into my dream workshop. In the last video, I built this custom pegboard, and in this video, I'm breaking down how to build this giant work table. I know I promised the final reveal would be posted this weekend, but I was able to squeeze in one more DIY tutorial, so I promise next weekend I will reveal the entire workshop. Here's my inspiration for the work table. I have so much storage on the back wall of the workshop, so I don't need to complicate this table with drawers or anything. I wanted a nice big table that I could move around easily. This could also be a great rustic dining table or island in the kitchen if you want to leave the wheels off and adjust the table height. I have a set of PDF project plans linked in the description below with the cut list, material list, and a breakdown of each step. You can also find the tools linked in the description below. Let's build a work table. For the tabletop, I'm using 2x10 by 12 foot pine boards. For the framing, I'm using 2x4s, and for the legs, I'm using 4x4s. To start this project, we planed down all of the 2x10 boards. If you don't have a planer, no worries, this isn't a necessary step. You may just have to do some extra sanding. I'll link this planer in the description below in case you want to add one to your workshop. You could use 1x lumber if you want to make this tabletop lighter. I liked the look of a thick, chunky tabletop, so I opted to go with the 2x10s. After the 2x10s were planed, Devin helped me rip the two end boards down to get the final depth of the tabletop, which is about 42 inches. Next, I cut all the framing pieces down to size. I wanted to notch out the bottom 3 stretcher pieces so that I could lay the long center stretcher across it. To do this, I marked out a 2x4 in the center and made a bunch of small cuts with my miter saw. I cleared the wood pieces and used a chisel to chisel away any leftover wood. All of the wood is cut down to size, and now we can drill pocket holes. I started by laying out the 2x10 boards how I want them and marked out where the pocket holes need to go. I drilled pocket holes in each board about 8 inches apart or so. This Kreg jig is great. It self-adjusts to the material thickness, making the process super easy. After the pocket holes were drilled in the 2x10s, I drilled pocket holes in all of the framing pieces. Check out the PDF project plans in the description below for the pocket hole patterns. The pocket holes are drilled, now it's time to assemble the tabletop. I'm going to assemble the tabletop in sections to make it a bit more manageable. I have my 48-inch clamps set up and 24-inch clamps so that I could do 2 at a time. To secure the boards together, I'm using wood glue and 2.5-inch pocket screws. I glued up one side of the board, set the board in place, clamped all the clamps down, and then secured the 2.5-inch pocket screws. I used my weight to press the boards flat as I screwed them together. I followed the same steps for the next 2 boards. The next day, after the wood glue was set, I added a 3rd board to the 48-inch clamps. Once those 3 boards were set, I added the last 2 boards. This was extremely heavy, so if you're building a tabletop this big, make sure you have help lifting it up. The tabletop is assembled and now it's time to sand. I chose to keep the edges of the 2x10s a little bit rounded instead of squaring them off. I wanted to be able to see the individual boards rather than it looking like one giant slab. I used 50 grit sandpaper and my belt sander to sand down the entire tabletop. If you don't have a planer, you may want to invest in a belt sander. This thing can cut through the wood pretty quick and create a nice level surface. After the belt sander, I used my orbital hand sander up to 220 grit sandpaper until the tabletop was nice and smooth. I made the countertop a few inches long on purpose so I could do a final square cut on each end. I used my circle saw to cut the tabletop to its final length, which is about 10 feet long. After the tabletop was cut down, I used my router and round over bit to round off the edges and corners of the tabletop. If you don't have a router, I recommend rounding off the edges with your sander so they aren't so sharp. The tabletop is finished, and now we can start focusing on the base. I went through and sanded all the 2x4 framing pieces and 4x4 legs. Now we can start to assemble the frame. I laid down some scrap hardboard so that my apron pieces were inset from the legs about 1/4 of an inch. I used wood glue and 2.5 inch pocket screws to secure each of the apron pieces to the 4x4 legs. The bottom apron piece is secured to the legs about 3 inches from the bottom of the 4x4s. I secured each of the short leg framing pieces first and then set the legs up on their side to secure the longer apron pieces. I secured the long apron pieces following the same steps with wood glue and 2.5 inch pocket screws. Devin helped me flip the base over to attach the long apron pieces on the other side. With the base laid on its side, I took this time to secure all of the 6-inch casters to the bottom of the 4x4 legs. These casters added 6 inches to the height of the table, so keep that in mind when determining the dimensions of your table. Once the base was flipped upright, I added a few more support pieces for the tabletop. Next, I used wood glue and clamps to secure the long stretcher piece inside the notched 2x4s. The base is assembled, it rolls incredibly smooth on the casters, and now we can secure the tabletop. The tabletop has a 1-inch overhang on all sides. I made sure to adjust the tabletop so the overhang was even. Then I used clamps to clamp the tabletop down to the apron pieces. All of the apron pieces have pocket holes going up towards the tabletop, and that's how I'm going to secure the tabletop. I used 2.5-inch pocket screws from underneath the table. Our work table is assembled, and now it's time to finish it off. I'm using this water-based wood stain by Behr in the color Special Walnut, and then I will finish it with water-based matte polyurethane. I applied the stain on the entire table using a little stain applicator pad. It worked perfectly for this project, getting in all the corners, and it made for a very clean application. After the stain was dried, I added 3 coats of polyurethane, sanding with 220 grit sandpaper in between each coat. There we have a big, beautiful work table. Once again, you can find the project plans and materials linked in the description below. Stay tuned for the final reveal of the workshop next weekend, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the final reveal video. Thank you guys so much for watching.